Hello everybody, welcome back to English Champion. Before we dive into today's episode about the continuing intersection between the fields of education, my field of English, and emerging technologies, I want to just give everybody an update on a new course that I just posted over on my teaching website, www.english-champion.com. It's another interdisciplinary course about the excellent novel, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Some philosophy in there, a little bit of history. It's a great new course for young students. Some of O'Brien's work is anthologized in many high school and college textbooks. So if you have a strong reader in your house and you want to give them a little bit of a history lesson and a philosophical lesson, please go check that out. And of course, I have many other interdisciplinary courses as well listed there, so that you're not just teaching one single thing. Here's this book, here's this content area. I believe in education that mixes them so that students make connections in their brains and they find it much more enjoyable. So go take a look at that course and all my other materials if you are interested. All right, today I just came across an article that really caught my eye. And once you hear the title of it, I think you'll understand why. But like I said, how technology continues to influence education is there seems to be a new change almost every single day. And we now have some research out of Stanford that shows, again, in my field of English, that it's not just students or it's not just what's going on with students who use AI, but also what happens with teachers who might use AI, specifically in the assessment of writing projects and in offering feedback to those students. So we think, well, it sounds great. After all, maybe the teacher doesn't have to read all of those pieces of writing and offer notes throughout the whole essay to give to those kids. The computer can do it faster, and it can give good insight very quickly, so students can improve faster. Sounds good. Oh, but there's a little bit of a problem. And this is what caught my eye. The title of the article, this appeared in the Hechinger Report, which is a kind of current events about education website. This is from a writer named Jill Barshay. She says, AI gives more praise and less criticism to black students. Identical essays get different feedback in Stanford study. Oh, okay. So it's not just that you are uploading a student's piece of writing to the AI and it's being neutral and unbiased and it's just looking at the criteria that you've set up as a teacher. No, it's actually taking into account students' ethnicity, culture, race, gender, all sorts of things. And it's treating kids differently. A little bit weird. So let's find out what's going on here from this Stanford study. I'm going to read and comment along the way, as I often do. So here's how it starts. As schools introduce artificial intelligence into the classroom, a new analysis suggests that these tools could be steering students in different directions depending on who they are. Can we think, well, education should be equal and fair to all, right? Not so much when it comes to AI. Researchers from Stanford fed 600 middle school essays into 4 different AI models and asked the models to give writing feedback. The argumentative essays were from a collection of student writing assembled for research purposes, which I'm assuming that means that these weren't part of their normal school curriculum. They participated in this research study where they just asked them, hey, here's a topic, make an argument about this. And so this wasn't for a real grade or anything. So then the researchers did something simple but revealing. They submitted each essay, remember they did 600 of them, to the AI models 12 more times, giving different descriptions of the student who wrote it, identifying the writer, for example, as black or white, male or female, highly motivated or unmotivated, or as having a learning disability. And the feedback shifted. So again, we would think, well, look, this is just a robot, right? I mean, we might think, well, if the robot was teaching your kids and they handed in a paper, they would just say, you received a 74 on this paper. Here are the rubric criteria. Like it would do it in such an objective way that you think, well, this is the best way to do it. It's the most fair. It takes away any teacher bias. It sticks to the system that you have designed that project around, your grading system. So and ideally it would be fast. So this sounds perfect. This is the great benefit of technology, right? Well, it's not so simple. So what did she mean when she says the feedback shifted? The researchers found consistent patterns across all the AI models. Essays attributed to black students received more praise and encouragement, sometimes emphasizing leadership or power. For example, your personal story is powerful. Adding more about your about how your experiences can connect with others could make this even stronger. Powerful. Again, this is supposed to be an argumentative essay. So, why you need something personal in there, it's unclear. I'll get to that here in 1 second. Essays labeled as written by Hispanic students or English learners were more likely to trigger corrections about grammar and proper English, which might make sense. After all, if students are struggling with the language itself, then it would probably highlight areas where the language itself needs to be improved. So that may not be too weird. When the student was identified as white, the feedback more often focused on argument, structure, evidence, and clarity, the kinds of comments that can push writers to strengthen their ideas. Oh, okay. So here's what's happening. I used to talk about this in my college classrooms all the time. I tell my students, you as the writer are not important, all right? You're important because these are your ideas and, I want to hear what you think. But from a reading standpoint, the readers don't care about you. What do the readers care about? Well, readers care about themselves. After all, if you're going to present an argument, what they care about is whether they believe you or not, or whether they're going to be persuaded by you or not. And the other thing that matters is the topic. The topic is what matters. It's not you. Because when you focus on yourself, there's a lot of just bad writing that emerges. It becomes too personal, which then the reader goes, well, I'm not you, so why should I care about this? It sounds like you really care about this topic, but how does this relate to me? If it doesn't, I'm just going to click away or I'm going to turn the page. It's not something I care about. So you have to make it relevant and useful for your audience. And the way you do that is you focus all of your energy on the topic itself. The topic helps you stay non-biased, helps you stay committed to kind of, if there's a research element to it, like finding background information that helps your argument. That's what's most important. So it's funny and it's kind of distressing here that the AI is actually focusing on the writer as the most important part of this thing. Your personal story is powerful. Adding more about your experiences. No. That's the least important thing. The two other things that we should be telling students about are focus on the topic. You're talking about yourself too much. Focus on the issue. And while you're doing that, think about the other person on the other end of this, the reader. How are they going to think about this? How are they going to feel emotionally? If all you're doing is talking about yourself, people think you're creating closeness. They're like, well, if I'm open about this thing that I care about, then other people will care about it too. That's not how people work, especially in an academic environment. Okay, if we're writing academic essays, which this is in a school environment. People care about themselves and they care about topics. They don't care about you. So get the focus off yourself. So what's the sad irony here is that the feedback that went to the white kids, which is about argument structure, evidence, clarity, the strengthening of ideas, as the author says here, well, those are actually the most beneficial things. The things that are emphasizing the kid himself, that's the least important part of it. And so not only is there a racial component here where you're treating the two races, black students receive this type of feedback, white kids receive this type of feedback. The fact that you're treating them differently is weird. But the worst part about it, and what makes this all racist, is you're actually giving the black kids worse advice. You think you're helping them. You're not. You're actually giving them worse advice. So in an effort to be nice and say, oh, this is powerful. Tell me more about your experience. You're actually making their effectiveness as a writer, a real writer, worse. And you're strengthening the writing of the white kids. So it's a weird, ironic twist here that when we think we're being so helpful, you're actually being more harmful. And this AI feedback is actually benefiting white kids, even though it sounds more strict and it sounds very dry. And the other is kind of emotional, has emotional resonance. Like, I love your personal story. That feedback for the minority students is actually worse. So very interesting distinction there. That in an effort to be very encouraging and I guess not racist, it actually turns out to be super racist because you're treating people differently and the advice you're giving to the minority students is worse than the advice you're giving to the white kids. It shouldn't be that way. All students should receive all the same advice because we should believe in equality in teaching, right? Continuing on, the AI models addressed females, so it's not just race, it's also gender, addressed female students more affectionately and used more first-person pronouns. For example, I love your confidence in expressing your opinion. Students labeled as unmotivated were met with upbeat encouragement. Again, that sounds logical, I guess. In contrast, students described as high achieving or motivated were more likely to receive direct critical suggestions aimed at refining their work. So again, this is the same thing. The other one was with race, this is with gender, but you're focusing on the author. I love your confidence in expressing your opinion. No, this isn't about you. All right, I know the teacher has asked you to write this essay, and so you think this is about you and your opinions and your language and all that stuff. It's actually not, though. All right. The topic itself and the audience are way more important than you. So how confident you are should mean nothing in this. And in contrast, the high achieving motivated students are actually receiving the best suggestions. They're direct, they're critical, and they're aimed at refining their work. Let's make this even better. Well, that's what every student should be getting. So the idea that is also so funny here with this I love your confidence thing. Like, there's been numerous research studies that show that high self-esteem in young students actually correlates inversely with academic success. All right, think about that. Students who are actually tougher on themselves, students who think, I'm not, I'm kind of average at this. This is something I struggle with, actually tend to do better in school than students who think, oh yeah, I'm good at this. I'm really smart. Like, that level of self-esteem that's overly positive is actually a negative for performance. And so there's, again, numerous studies, you can go find them, that groups of students who have high opinions of themselves do worse. Students that are actually way more honest and self-reflective, introspective about their true skills actually end up doing a lot better. So again, this idea that the high achieving or motivated actually who are already good students are actually receiving the best feedback. So you're just making the good students even better, and you're making the students who probably aren't so good think they're really good, which actually makes them worse. So again, this happens across races as well as gender. So there's more to this story. So what's also interesting here is there's just this little chart that has different words for different students. And so we see just a list of words that certain students see more, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and female. And there's certain words that those students see less. This is very interesting. Words that Black students see less are words like should, avoid. Well, you might think, well, who cares? That's just one word that doesn't really give a full picture of the type of feedback they're getting. Well, wait a second. What's the word should imply? It means that the teacher has an answer that's better than what you're doing, and they're advising you, this is something you need to change. All right? That's something that Black students, it says, almost never see. So that's kind of weird. If the teacher is the one who's the smart one in the room, which they should be, and they're trying to give a student advice, what they might want to do is say, you should do this to make it sound better in this way. You should, move these paragraphs around. You should do this. This would strengthen your essay. But they don't. They don't use the word should very often. Same thing with the word avoid. You might think, well, they're trying to not be negative. But negative words are really important. All right? It's especially when you're working with young people. Like when you have a small child, okay, and they're 3 years old, all right, instead of walking around the house and teaching them how to respect all of the delicate sculptures and pieces of glass and all the artwork and all that stuff, instead of saying, trying to teach a young kid how to positively interact with these very delicate things that are in some person's house that you're visiting, you know what the easier way is? Don't touch. If you touch, you're going to get a spanking, or you're going to, go to timeout, or whatever people do. Like, the avoid word is actually a good thing, because at various points in our youth, it's very hard to wrap our brains around what we should do, and it's way easier to wrap our brains around what we should not do. Okay, so using avoid language, avoid using, I don't agree with this, but like avoid using passive voice, or avoid using the word and to start a sentence or any other conjunction. Like, okay, well, just instead of trying to get into the details of, well, here's, the real form of writing, and here's the voice of it all. Like, if you want them to do something, just tell them what to do. Say, don't do that. It's way easier. All right. I coached basketball for many years. Instead of, when they're young, talking to kids about, well, we need to dribble this way and we need to pass this way and we need to, when we're holding the ball, we need to be doing this. Like, that's a lot for kids to think about because all of those skills have other sub skills built underneath them. It's when you're learning the game of basketball, that can be very tricky. You know what's easier for kids? Do not turn the ball over. Do not throw it to the other team. Do not let them take it from you. That's way easier. The avoid language is way easier to communicate to kids who are learning something. As you get older, yes, you can get into the nuances of why one way is better than another. But when they're young and still learning, it's very helpful to just say, avoid doing that. You should do this. You should not do that. It's very simple. And yet, black students, apparently, it says, never hear that. Well, that's weird. You would think that would be quite helpful. We also see they don't hear the word good very often. You might think, oh, well, the AI teachers are being very critical. No, it's the opposite. The reason why they don't hear the word good very often is because the words they see the most are great, excellent, powerful. It's like they're overly positive. So it's like, really, are all these these student essays really excellent? Truly? They don't deserve any criticism, really. So words they also don't hear, unclear. So that's just with the black students. The same thing happens with the female students to a certain degree. They don't hear the word good. What do they hear? They hear wonderful, appreciate. Like, I really appreciate your essay. It's like, what's wrong with saying, hey, this is pretty good, or this isn't good enough? But they don't use the word good. Everything is very, very positive. A couple other words that are sort of interesting here that show up for certain groups, but not for other groups. Words like our and we, these kind of personal pronoun words, those show up with black students. They do not show up with Hispanic or Asian students. Kind of weird. You'd think, well, if you're trying to give feedback to any minority student and you want to make them feel included and you want to, just be consistent across your instruction, you might use we and our quite often with all of them. No. They don't use it with Hispanic or Asian students. Instead, they just use those words with black students. Why? Same thing with female. Words we and you and I are very common for use with females. Strange. Why? Why are you using so many personal pronouns? Is it because the teacher, or in this case the AI teacher, is sort of going overboard and trying to have some kind of personal connection with the student, and they want to kind of go above and beyond with black students, like, oh, I'm on your side on this topic. You're doing a really great job, but they don't do that for Asian or Hispanic students or regular white boy students. Seems strange. Words that also are sort of oddly placed here. Words like formal, respect, culture, and structure are all words that are common in Hispanic and Asian feedback, but do not appear in black student feedback. Kind of weird. Formal, respect, culture, and structure don't appear. On the other hand, words that appear in black student writing, but not in Hispanic or Asian student writing, stereotype, systemic, American. Again, you think, well, if you're dealing with minorities and you're trying to, again, have this kind of equity mindset where we're treating all these kids as sort of part of a group that stands in contrast to white students, where you're kind of trying to help all these kids, why wouldn't you use those with all the groups? But they don't. The AI only uses them with the black students. Seems strange. So those are just a few of a very interesting list that, again, words that appear more frequently for certain groups and appear less frequently for other groups. Again, you think, why would it matter? Any student deserves your best analytical and evaluative feedback. So why are you choosing some words for certain students but not for other students? That doesn't really make sense. But that's what happens. So the article continues. In other words, the AI feedback was both different in tone and in the expectations it had for the student, because each of those words has either a tone kind of element to it, or it's about the goals of the project and the structure of the writing and all that stuff. So why are they different? This is based on research that has not yet been published quite yet, but it was nominated for a best paper at a learning analytics conference, and it's scheduled to be published shortly. The researchers described the feedback results as showing positive feedback bias and feedback withholding bias, offering more praise and less criticism to some groups of students. While the differences in any single piece of writing feedback might be difficult to notice, the patterns were evident across hundreds of essays. So these kinds of feedback biases, one way that low-level teachers especially, but this even gets talked about at the college level, have been sort of advised to give feedback on, could be any project, but especially writing, is sort of this positive feedback sandwich. All right, very childish thing, but it's quite common. Positive feedback sandwich. So let's say the student turns in a really bad paper, but you don't want to be too tough on them because you don't want to discourage them. So you say, hey, I really enjoyed your essay. There are some problems with it, however, that we need to work on. But overall, I think this was a great effort and you can keep getting better. Okay, so it started positive. I love your essay. The criticism part is the middle of the sandwich, and then you conclude with something else that's positive. And the thinking goes, well, again, you start and end positive. So maybe those will be the things that the student remembers. And so they feel good about where they are and wanting to learn and all that stuff. And that's just complete nonsense. It doesn't make any sense, because if a student is looking at their essay and it says 62 at the top, and the kid's like, well, I got a D on this. Clearly this wasn't very good. And you open by going, I really enjoyed your essay. Like, what? No, you didn't. You gave me a D. Why are you not being honest? Or I think there's a lot of really good things here. Well, not that many, because you gave me a D. So why are you telling me these positive things when it's not true? So what I've always done is I do the opposite of that. I give a negative feedback sandwich, and it's way more effective. So steal this idea, please. Positive feedback sandwich, garbage, okay? Because if you have two positives and one negative, the kid goes, oh, I guess I wasn't so bad. It was mostly positive. And they forget about, no, you got a D on this paper and you're not a good writer. So we need to do better at this. The negative feedback sandwich reverses all that and says, look, obviously you got a 62. This paper is not very good. There are a lot of problems. Positive in the middle. I can show you how to improve this paper. There are ways that this paper and your argument could be better and your score could improve. That's positive. There's hope. I can get better at this. But it's going to take a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot to change. So it's going to be up to you if you want to improve. Put it back on the student. It's up to them. I can help you get better at this, as I said in the middle of that sandwich. But you're the one who's going to want to have to do it. Do you want to do it? I can help you. Do you want to work with me? Great. Okay, let's work on it. The positive feedback sandwich glosses over all that and it just hides what little criticism you are daring to offer amid this fluffy positivity that the students, they don't even remember your critical feedback, because they're like, oh, my teacher said I'm doing pretty well. She liked my writing. Well, then they don't improve. So the thought is, well, if I'm positive, then they'll want to keep doing it. And that's just not how it goes. When kids think they're already good at something, they just stay there. They don't try to improve. You only improve when you know you're not very good at something. That's human nature. If you're not very good at something and you care about it, like there's a motivation, either an internal or external motivation, that's when you get better at it. But if you think you're already good at something, you don't keep trying. That's what I just said up above with the self-esteem stuff. When kids think they're already really skilled at something, their grades go down. Why? Because they stop trying. They go, oh, I'm already good at that. I don't need to study anymore. I don't need to practice anymore. I'm already good. Because the teacher told me how much they love my writing. Yeah, that's the opposite. Negative feedback sandwich. I know it sounds harsh, but it's so great, and it gives kids honesty and actual hope, because they know, look, my teacher's telling it to me straight, but they've also said, here's how I could improve. It's not completely hopeless. Yeah, I got an F or a D, so it looks like I'll never dig myself out of this hole. But the teacher said, if I just listen to her or him, then I can get better at this and I can improve my grade. Okay, well that's the most positive thing of all, and it's honest. Instead of it's like, oh, there's a lot of good stuff in this essay. It's like, no, you gave me a D. It's not. There's hardly anything good in this essay. So why are you telling me that? So this feedback bias and withholding bias, that can be fixed with just a simple perspective change from the teacher. And you do that with everybody. You don't do it for certain kids because you're trying to spare their feelings, or, oh, they're from a certain group of a certain cultural background. I need to talk to them differently. No, you talk to everybody the same, so that everyone knows you're honest. This is how he, the teacher, or she talks to everybody. So that must be what they actually believe. So I can trust them. I may not agree with them. I may not like them. I might think it's going to be too hard, but at least I know they're being honest. And that's where we should start with students. Always, always be honest. A couple more paragraphs. The researchers believe that the AI is changing its feedback on identical essays because the models are trained on vast amounts of human language. Okay, so here's the real kicker of this, all right? We think, well, as we said at the top, well, the AI, the robot element of this would just be completely objective and they wouldn't have these biases. The problem is, as we've been talking about for years now, is that the AI is trained on humans. So this is what humans have already been doing. They've already been treating different races differently. How's that been working out? Have you seen test scores lately of different groups? Yeah, us being nice to everybody and lying to them and telling them how much we like their writing or whatever subject area we're in, like, isn't helping. So you know what is better? Just be honest. Have a standard for everybody. Here's the competency level. Everyone has to reach it. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what nationality you are. I don't care where you came from, what gender you are, whatever. Everyone does this. And if you don't, there's a consequence. There's nothing in the world more fair than that. Like, you want equity? Well, this is what equity does. You try to treat people differently to manipulate the outcomes, and this is what happens. It all falls apart. It's horrible. You want equality? Well, then you start getting, everyone trying to reach the same standard. That's what we're aiming at. A certain level of competency, and everyone's held accountable. Well, that's equality. You treat everyone the same. That's fair. I don't know why this is so hard. So the AI, yeah, it's to blame because it's the one doing it, but it's also the human teachers that it's been trained on. So this is the bigger problem. We have bad human teachers. Human teachers can also soften criticism when responding to students from certain backgrounds because they don't want to appear unfair or discouraging. Yeah, as I just said. How's that working out the last 30 years? The AI models are picking up on the biases that humans exhibit, said the lady who is the lead author of this study and a doctoral student at Stanford. So here's the big irony, okay? Throughout all this time, it's been kind of this idea that, well, if we're going to be progressive educators, we're trying to give out opportunity and access to everybody and pull everybody up. We need to treat certain groups differently because after all, they've had it harder, and we don't want to be discouraging. We don't want to be too critical or mean. And so we're going to treat everybody differently in an attempt to raise everybody up, make everyone more educated. Okay. So because the AI platforms were trained on humans, the humans' racism in treating everyone differently has now moved over into the AI, which also now treats everybody differently. So the teachers, the article is about, the perception of AI racism, but really the teachers have been racist all along. Those who have been the most progressive and think they're doing good things by treating people differently, that's racist. I don't understand. I don't see any other way around it. There's no other explanation for that. Whereas those of us who believe in kind of tradition and equal standards for everybody, like, I treat everyone fairly. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're black, white, pink with green polka dots. I don't care who you are. In this class, here's what we're doing. If you reach it, great. I'll help you reach it. But if you don't reach it, okay, there's a consequence for that. But it's up to you if you want to do that. If you want to, work hard and show me your skills. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you because that's lying and it's racist. So those of us who have been very kind of classically liberal about this, about like, no, we treat everybody equally. That's what we should be doing. Yeah, we're the ones criticized for being, either too strict or that we're the racist, that we have, having standards is somehow racist. Like, no. Not having standards, that's racist. When you treat people differently, that's the definition of racism. Because you think they're inferior, you're treating them differently. That's racist. And so now it's morphed over into the AI, which is doing the exact same thing that these teachers have been doing for all these years. At first glance, the differences in feedback might not seem harmful. More encouragement could boost a student's confidence. Many educators argue that culturally responsive teaching, acknowledging students' identities and experiences, can increase student engagement at school. All right, so here's how you do this. You don't treat students differently, especially based on their ethnicity or race or gender or anything like that. You treat students differently in the way you instruct them based on who they are as individuals, not who they are as members of some group. And here's how you do it. This is how I talk to students, okay? I see a student, let's say I have a black kid who's struggling, all right? And he's whatever, he's a basketball player. And he's not doing well in my class. Well, I don't treat him differently because he's black. I don't change my instruction because, oh, well, you're from this group, and so therefore, I should try to talk to you differently and all that, like, or worse yet, grade you differently. No. You instruct them slightly differently based on who they are as individuals. Well, who is this individual? Well, he's a basketball player. So in my writing class, I would say, hey, you're getting a D in my class, and I can tell you're not happy about that, but I want you to improve. And it's just like when you're on the basketball court and the coach is frustrated and not giving you very much playing time. Getting a D in your English class is kind of like being sent to the bench for a while on your basketball team. It's that you're not doing things right, and so there's a consequence. On the court, you get less playing time. In the classroom, you get fewer points. You get a lower grade. It's the same thing. So what do you do in basketball when you're not getting enough playing time? When you're frustrated with the coach and you think he's benching you and you wish you could play more, what do you do? Any kid who knows anything about being an athlete goes, well, I usually I try harder in practice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I spend more time in the weight room. I stay after practice and run extra sprints. I meet with the coach outside of practice and go over our offense so I understand it better. Yeah, exactly. So I want you to do all those things in my English classroom. All that extra effort that is bringing your grade down, just like sometimes on the basketball court, it brings your playing time down. Let's use our sports mindset and attack this classroom problem. I know English isn't your favorite thing, but we can solve this problem together by approaching it from a sports mindset. So let's dig in. Let's put forth a bit more effort. Let's pay more attention to the details, and let's start improving. Just like on the basketball court, if you're struggling at the free throw line, what do? Well, you spend more time doing it so that you can start gradually improving. That's what I want for you. I want you to improve, because here's the standard that everyone has to reach. Everybody, not just you. The whole class has to do this. So everyone's the same, and right now you're not there, but I think you can be, because if you apply your basketball mindset to this, you'll be in good shape. That's how you do it. That's how it's not culturally responsive teaching and acknowledging students' identities and experiences. You figure out, well, what are they interested in? What do they do in their spare time? What do they care about? They may not care about English, but what do they care about? And you make a connection, and that's how you reach them. Or say a kid has a job, you have the same discussion about, sometimes, you're frustrated with your boss, or, you're not getting as many hours, or you wish you got a raise. Like, okay, well, what do you do? Well, you start working harder. That's what you do. And what do you know? That usually works. And the same thing can happen in the classroom. So let's take your work mentality and how you got to be, how you went from being a low-level employee to now you're an assistant manager at your store. Well, how'd you do that? Oh, well, I took on these extra responsibilities, and I worked hard, and I came in early, and I stayed late. Like, okay, well, let's do that in the classroom. Let's do that with your writing projects, and watch. I guarantee you're going to be better. Yeah, they get it. So that's how you make connections to students. You don't say, well, you're black, so I guess I got to treat you differently. You're Asian, so you got to be treated differently as well. No. Real teachers find out who the kids are, and if they're struggling, or even if they're not, even if they're good students, you can still connect to them in that way. But especially if they're struggling and you want them to improve, you find something else in their life where they've had to do something similar in the past, or they're currently going through. Like, well, I had to improve over here, so I guess I can do that same thing here. Yeah, that's what you do. It's not hard, and it's not about race. It's about, well, just talk to the kid and find out what they like. Find out what they're interested in. I mean, it's not hard, but it just takes a little effort. But again, the AI can't do that. So unless it has enough stored data from real teachers who have done it, because clearly, they're not programming students to do that, or AI to do that. So we need more teachers to be doing it. So as it just said, like, they were hoping to increase engagement by being nicer and treating them differently. And it says, but there's a trade-off. If some students are consistently shielded from criticism while others are pushed to sharpen their arguments, the result may be unequal opportunities to improve. Exactly. Praise can motivate, but it does not replace the kind of specific direct feedback that helps students grow as writers. One lady who's part of the National Writing Project recently heard a presentation of this study and said she was worried that Black and Hispanic students might not be pushed to learn to write better. Weirdly, she didn't mention Asian students. Does she not care about them? I don't understand. But I think it's most obvious that the AI is being most encouraging and most generous to those other students. That raises a difficult question for schools as they adopt AI tools. When does helpful personalization cross the line into harmful stereotyping? Well, the example I just gave takes the stereotyping out of it. The personalization is actually about that person. It's not about what race are you, what gender are you, what's your lived experience like as, as a female or as a Hispanic guy, or like, no, it's like, what are you into? What are you interested in? When have you struggled before? How did you solve that problem? Is there a way we could apply that to this problem of poor writing? Let's work on it together. That's the personalization. Then you avoid the stereotyping. I don't need to stereotype people because I treat everybody the same. And then the ways that I treat them differently are based on them as individuals because I'm trying to get to know them personally. It's not about racial or gender categories. Of course, teachers are unlikely to explicitly tell AI systems a student's race or background in the way the researchers did in this experiment, but that doesn't solve the problem. I don't know. I think they might. If they're hoping to get this very specific feedback for certain types of kids, I think they just might do that. Say, well, this kid is, a Black kid from a certain type of family, or she's a female and whatever. Like, why wouldn't teachers have the AI do that? Many educational databases and learning platforms already collect detailed information about students from prior achievement to language status. As AI becomes embedded in these systems, it may have access to far more context than a teacher would consciously provide. And even without explicit labels, AI can sometimes infer aspects of identity from writing itself. So that's the scary part that, again, people just seem to be glossing over is these systems that get embedded in the platforms at these schools. Like, do you understand how much data it's gathering about your kids? Like, all this information about 12-year-olds is getting uploaded into the system. And we might say, well, some of that's already there just because so many things are already digital. But like, it's weird that this would be happening at a school, that the school would be harvesting through AI platforms kids' personal information. I don't know. It's weird. So that's just another element to this. Lastly, 10 recommends that teachers review the writing feedback before forwarding it to students. So you have the AI do it, but then you need to read it and go over it to make sure it sounds okay before you give it to the kids. But one of the selling points of AI feedback is that it's instantaneous. If the teacher needs to review it first, that slows it down and potentially undermines its effectiveness. And to be honest, just like the kids who don't check the work when they have AI write the papers, teachers aren't going to, because of this very thing, it slows it down. They're not going to check the feedback when the AI does the feedback for them. They're just going to send it on to the kids because, after all, the AI is so smart, right? Why would they check it? It's especially when it takes up so much time. AI also offers the potential of personalization. The risk is that without some careful attention, that personalization could lower the bar for some students while raising it for others. So this is a super old concept that keeps reemerging, which is the soft bigotry of low expectations. That phrase has been around since I was a kid, where you think you're treating people fairly or you're trying to give more opportunity to people. And in fact, all you're doing is you're telling them you're not as smart, you're not as capable, you're too lazy, you have whatever problem, that impedes you from actually doing the work that everybody else is doing. You can't do it. Therefore, I need to adjust the standards to help you along. I need to be nicer and be more encouraging because, you have something wrong with you and I know you're struggling and so I have to help you. It's like, why in the world would you think of people like that? That's horrible. It's racist. And it's just so degrading and patronizing that, like, you automatically think Black kids, Hispanic kids, whatever group of people you're talking about can't do stuff. And so what, you have to come in and help them and lie to them instead of push them to achieve, you just, as it said, lower the bar. Well, that doesn't make our society better that you're lowering the bar for half our population. That's ridiculous. So that is a phrase that, again, it's been around forever and shows up right here. If you have low expectations, if you think people have inherent qualities about themselves where they can't reach certain levels, well, that's a prejudice. You have a belief about them that is of your own making, and that's not okay. And I never do that in my classes. Again, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what background you have. In my class, you can do it. Everyone can do what I'm asking. and I'll help you along the way, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to change the standards, because this is what we're doing. To be a high school graduate, or to get out of my college class, or whatever grade level you're at, to pass 5th grade, here's what you have to do. If you don't do it, well, there's going to be consequences. So you're not special. You're not different than everybody. That's something else I would talk to students about, is like, I would put that idea to them, and they would never fight me on it because they knew the truth of it. I would say, they'd say, oh, I'm really frustrated and I'm getting a low grade. And I'd say, well, I graded everybody else the exact same way. So what, do you want me to grade you differently? Is that, are you special in some way? Are you different than every other kid here? Because don't you think that would be unfair that I grade you differently than all the other kids in the class? And they automatically go, well, no. It's like, yeah, they know that that's not fair. So like, put it on them, and you won't have to worry about this lowering the bar. Like, say, well, no, this is how I grade everybody. Everyone has to do this. So it's you're not so different than everybody else. So just do what everyone else is doing. This kind of whole thing goes to the super famous clip that is continuing to make the rounds now as we get certain people into the public spotlight even more. But the famous conversation between Adam Carolla and Gavin Newsom, like whatever it was, 10, 12 years ago, where he just kept putting it to Newsom, like, well, why do you think these people can't do these things? What biases do you have against those people? Because you keep naming certain groups. Some of those are listed here in our article. Why those groups? Why are you treating them differently? Because the standard for what other people do is here. Why do you think they can't reach that standard? Is there something wrong with them? Do they have a problem that is inherent in them? Like, are they inferior in some way? Of course, like, oh, no, I'm not saying that. It's like, well, then explain it. Why do you think you have to have this bigotry of low expectations for people? And of course, the whole joke for that like 15-minute clip is he has no answers because it's dumb and it's racist. So this is where we are. So whether it's school, education broadly, whether it's family stuff, whether it's crime stuff, whether it's whatever, anything cultural and social, like we need to have some standards for how we do things. And for all of us to get along and keep ourselves safe and flourish to a certain degree, everyone kind of needs to go along with it. And if you're not competent enough, well, there needs to be some sort of consequence for that. And if you go around saying, well, this group can't do it, they're not smart enough, they can't figure things out, well, that's racist. You can't do that in a teaching environment. You need to treat everybody fairly so that the kids know, hey, I can do this. I'm part of this group. Everyone else is doing it. I have to keep up. This is what we're doing here, so I'm going to do it. Instead of looking for, well, can you cut me some slack? Can you lower the standards for me? And then now they get to college and they can't function. Thomas Sowell has written about this for years, where there's numerous studies where certain students got accepted to really prestigious universities when they didn't really, from an academic standpoint anyway, didn't deserve to be there. Like their SAT scores and GPAs weren't high enough. And then they got there and then they had to drop out because it was too hard. It's like, yeah, because you were lied to the whole time up to that, thinking, that you were actually better than you were, when in fact you should have gone to a regular school or a community college for a while or something, where that's a place you could be successful because you have the competencies for those places, but you hadn't reached the standards to go to Harvard or MIT or whatever. Like, yeah, this has been going on forever, and yet we keep doing it, and now the AI is doing it as well. One final thing, this is the craziness of education. Okay, I've been in it for 25 years, and I thought it was weird when I started at age 22, and it's even weirder now. But I just saw an article regarding these standards the other day, and like some guy had posted this article about we need to get to standards-based grading. And I was like, isn't that what we've always done? Isn't that normal? That's what I always do. So I've always done. So like, what is this like new idea you're offering? And so I read his little article, and he was comparing it to what's called traditional grading. I was like, what's traditional grading? And it's basically the standards is about having competencies, and we need students to reach competencies. This is the objective. We need you here. Traditional grading, I guess, incorporates like all the other factors of how kids participate in the education environment, like attendance and participation grades. And, well, they were struggling, so I'm going to tweak their grade here. I might curve things in my class a bit to help some of these lower students. Like, this makes no sense. So here's this guy writing an article about standards-based grading as if it's some new idea, when it's actually the thing we should have been doing all along. It's what I've been doing all along. Why hasn't everyone else been doing this? And the thing that nobody should have been doing all along is somehow called traditional grading. Like the terminology is completely backwards. So it's just, education is so weird that people are desperate to, I don't even know how to explain it, do the mental gymnastics they have to do to make themselves feel good instead of just do what's simplest and most honest and right. Like, have a standard. Treat everybody equally so that everyone can reach the standard. Like, don't lower the standards. Don't change them for certain students, but not for others. One standard, one way of teaching. It's the simplest way, and it's the least racist way. Shouldn't that be what we're all doing? Have standards. Treat kids the same. Don't have this discriminatory ideology about, well, certain groups need extra this and I need to encourage them in this way, but not those kids in that way. Like, no, when you're in my class, I give my best effort to every single student. I don't care what color they are. I don't care their background. And I give them all the same types of feedback. That this argument needs to be clearer. Your grammar needs to be cleaner. The structure needs to flow better. I'm not sure what you're saying. Can you clarify this? I say that to all kids. I don't care. Again, if they're a good student, bad student, different race, whatever. You're all getting the same feedback. The way I will go further and try to reach you specifically is on your personal interests. Something that you already know a lot about, or you're pretty good at, or you're struggling with in your personal life. Nothing about race or gender. Like, you're not part of a group to me. You're a person. And so I'm going to treat you as a person. But as a person, you need to do what we do here. If it's at the college level, you need to do what college students are required to do. If it's high school, you need to do what high school students are required to do. If it's fifth grade, you need to do what fifth grade students are required to do. It's one standard for everybody. That's true fairness. That's equality. And that's a better path for education generally, but especially for offering feedback on essays. So that's that article from the Hechinger Report. I've included the link below if you want to take a look at it. But yeah, it seems like every day there's a new problem, and people just refuse to acknowledge how simple it could be to just fix it. Have humans do this the right way, and everything would be fine. That's it for now. See you next time.